Notice when the dinosaur says you've got a huge opportunity right now as you rebuild your economies and bounce back from this pandemic. Maybe it was Klaus Schwab who was voicing the dinosaur. Because, yes, a huge opportunity for a great reset. One that limits your ability to drive a car, to own a home, to build a family, to even eat a cheeseburger. While at the same time, mega corporations are able to pay for so-called green credits by claiming that patches of inaccessible and undevelopable land supposedly offset their emissions. So what can we expect out of this summit? Joining us now to discuss is biostatistician and founder of JunkScience.com, Steve Milloy. Thanks for being here tonight, Steve.
Hey, Kara, thanks for having me.
Great. So what's your response to this infantilizing propaganda straight from the UN mouthpieces?
I just got to point out a couple things. First off, in America, we don't subsidize fossil fuels. What gets subsidized is wind and solar. And those poor people that Jack Black, the dinosaur, talked about, they don't have any fossil fuels. If they had fossil fuels, they'd be better off. And if we force them to wait for wind and solar, well, they'll never have energy, and they're going to just be mired in poverty and die early because of it. Fossil fuels have raised our standard of living to an incredible height. I mean, they've taken us from 1 billion people pre-industrial revolution to almost 8 billion now, living longer, healthier, and wealthier lives than ever before. Fossil fuels are perhaps the greatest technology of all time. And the notion that we're just going to cast them aside for God knows what, I mean, nothing else works. You know, if wind and solar work so much better and are so much cheaper, well, how come, places like India and China and Africa don't just adopt them? You know, there's 300 million people in India that don't have electricity, don't have, access to a decent amount of electricity. And in Africa, it's 600 million. And, their only entryway to development is through fossil fuels. And this is being denied them by, the UN, which, by the way, we should get out of because it's just for a global communist government. It doesn't, it's never done anything useful in its entire existence, but advocate for that. So, what's going to come out of this conference? Well, nothing, because Joe Biden is going there with empty hands. He's got nothing to take there. China is not even showing up. They're not cutting emissions. Putin is not showing up. India, so they weren't cutting emissions. They said net zero was nonsense. They expect the U.S. to pay them $2.5 trillion. The whole thing is just going to be a disaster.
It is. And speaking of wanting to pull out the UN, which I definitely agree with, but doesn't we pay the UN too as well? We give them a heck of a lot of money every single year. So, when they talk about, this is your tax dollars at work, being lectured by a giant dinosaur, in this infantilizing way, that's basically our tax dollars at work. Basically, he's reading a script that I'm sure Beijing probably wrote for the dinosaur.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we are paying for the UN. Without the U.S., the UN would collapse. And it's doing nothing for the U.S. It's not like, the UN is not increasing the standard of living around the world. If you go to the UNICEF page, you'll see that they say 7,500 children die every day from malnutrition. Malnutrition is a readily solvable problem. We have so much food that we burn it for energy. That's how Iowa corn farmers make most of their money. That food could go to relieve some of that starvation, save some of those lives. It's an easy thing to do, to feed people, right? Give away food. Are we doing that? No. We are destroying our energy system and our economy. We are building windmills and solar panels which don't work, which have caused the ongoing energy crisis that Europe is going through now, and that we, in America, we're going to be experiencing soon as we get to winter. Green has just been a disaster, and of course, Democrats for some reason want more of it.
Well, it hasn't been a disaster for everyone. I mean, look at our elites. I mean, one of the first there's so many scandals out of the Biden administration. But one of the very first ones was Proterra. And some of the Biden energy executives, top execs in his administration, a lot of them had money involved in stocks in Proterra, which was one of these electric vehicle type companies. So they're making bank off of this. And I mean, when we talk about the Great Reset, one of its biggest things is, I know there's ideologues who really believe what they're saying, but they're kind of few and far between. Really, it's about realism for a lot of these people. They make money off of this, and they're really restructuring our global economies to help these, a lot of these left-wingers who have a lot of their money put into these green energy. So really, do you think it's just a giant giveaway to some of these people?
Well, there's a lot of that going on. I mean, a big motivation for climate is all the rent seekers, the wind and solar industry. And then you have just the outright fraudsters like Slurenda and Fisker Automotive. And basically anything else we give, money to, any green organization, they don't produce anything. They're all failures. It's just, but I guess climate activists, their main goal is political, but they find the useful idiots that are interested in the revenues from government and the subsidies, and so they've teamed up, and it's quite sizable now. And now we have major financial institutions like BlackRock and really all of Wall Street looking forward to fixed payments from taxpayers to themselves with borrowed federal money at 0%. I mean, it's great work for them. It's going to do nothing for the climate. It's just going to enslave and impoverish us.
And I just have to say before I let you go, I mean, listening to Jack Black, the dinosaur, whatever you want to call him, I mean, talking about saving our species, it's about humanity. But I mean, this is the same kind of left-wing people who want half of us gone. They say humanity's the problem and we're the cause of all the world's problems. And if only humanity didn't exist, if we offed ourselves, they're always trying to force all sorts of, limits on how many kids you can have. I mean, literally, Tracy Stone Manning, sitting at the head now of the Bureau of Land Management, back in the 90s, she was calling for one-child style, Beijing-style, child credit, saying you can only have, this is redeemable for one child and that's all you get. Maybe you get two if you're lucky. So, I mean, these are the kind of people saving the species, but for whom? They want half of us gone.
Yeah, these are people who think that the carrying capacity of the planet is about 2 billion. So they want about, almost 6 billion of us to just step off. I mean, that's been their position since the 1960s with Paul Ehrlich and his population bomb book, and nothing has changed. They probably had high hopes for COVID, but that hasn't panned out. I think we're going to survive that. But now they want to come back at us with climate, and they're just going to impoverish us and kill us.
Steve, what a happy note, I guess, to leave off the interview on. Thanks for joining us tonight.
All right, Kara, thank you.
And up next, when the UN isn't browbeating the rest of us on climate change, which conveniently helps China, they're busy undermining Israel at the behest of terrorists. I'll explain more after the break.